Hello, I'd like to invite you back to my channel entitled Family. Let's talk about money. As always, the channel is brought to you by my insurance company, AIC, which stands for Artist Insurance Consultants, and the telephone number is 1-888-532-1153. We specialize in life insurance. So if you'd like to get a life insurance quote, or you just have some questions you would like to ask about insurance, please give us a call. Once again, the number 1-888-532-1153. Well, I'd like to welcome you back, as I said before. And today we're going to be talking about something a little bit different than what I had originally planned because of things that actually took place yesterday. We know we're coming up on the Juneteenth celebration this weekend. And so I'm going to focus my attention on the Juneteenth holiday. And this is going to be entitled Juneteenth, a very short-lived celebration. So on June 17th, 2021, which was actually yesterday, the President of the United States signed a bill that made Juneteenth a national holiday. But if we look at the history of what happened at the end of slavery, was it really something to celebrate? Newly freed blacks were given nothing for 250 years of free labor. In fact, we're talking about free labor that built the wealth of this nation, but they were giving nothing. No money, no land, no food, no livestock, no tools. Where at the same time, the U.S. government was giving away millions of acres of land to white European immigrants coming into the country under the Homestead Act. Now, if you're not familiar with the Homestead Act, I encourage you to go back and check one of my other channels. I talk about it in detail, and the title of that was The Homestead Act, How It Built Wealth. So if you get a chance, go back and take a look at that and better understand what we're talking about when we say the Homestead Act. But getting back to talking about the newly freed slaves actually receiving nothing. Now, Dr. Martin Luther King described our ancestors' newfound freedom in this way. He said it was freedom to hunger, freedom to the winds and rains from heaven, freedom without food to eat or land to cultivate. He said it was freedom and famine at the same time. So if there was any celebration at the end of slavery, it was very short-lived under these circumstances. So what happened next? Well, since the newly freed blacks were given no economic base, once again, after 250 years of free labor, and since the former slave owners lost their entire workforce, well, they presented a solution to our newly freed ancestors that they said would benefit both sides. And it was called sharecropping. So how does sharecropping work? Well, the former slave owners encouraged the newly freed slaves to stay and continue to work the land. Except now, at harvest time, well, they will actually share in the profits. So for a people that was given absolutely nothing after 250 years of free labor, you may notice I'm emphasizing that because it's extraordinary, especially since, like I said, it built the wealth of this nation. But since they were given nothing, they had nothing, it actually sounded like a pretty good deal to them. So at least now they'll be getting paid for their labor. So contracts were signed and sharecropping started. Remember the contracts, because we're gonna come back and talk about that a little later. So now we gotta realize we're talking about farming. So a lot had to be done before anybody was going to get a profit. Land had to be prepared, seeds had to be planted, the The land had to be cultivated, and then eventually they would be able to harvest. But we know that this takes several months. So during this time, the landowner had to provide housing, provide food, provide clothing, tools, all the things that they provided during slavery. But during slavery, it was just considered the cost of doing business because they were getting the free labor. Now that the labor was no longer free, now the white landowners were charging our ancestors for all these things, keeping a running tally. So when the harvest finally came in and it was taken to market, the landowner came back. The sharecroppers were excited because they thought now it's time to get paid. And then they were shocked to find out that the landowner, well, he told them, your profits from the planting this season came to this amount, but the money you owe me for all the things I provided over the last several months came to this amount. So not only did our ancestors not get paid, they were now in debt to the white landowners. So many of them felt like, well, this is no different than slavery. We didn't get paid before, and we're not getting paid now. So they're like, we're out of here. But let's go back to that contract. See, they signed a contract to take part in this sharecropping, and the powers that be, actually made it illegal for a sharecropper to break a contract. No, the only person that could break a work contract would be the white landowner. And so if you tried to leave, you could be convicted of a crime and jailed. Now, there might have been some that see this happen and think, well, I'm never going to sign a contract with anybody. I'm just going to head on my own and try to figure this out the best way I can. Well, they actually had laws set up to prevent you from doing that. It was called a vagrancy law. And the way this worked was, you could be walking down the street, they could stop you, and if you could not prove that you were gainfully employed or that you were a landowner, here again, you could be jailed and convicted of a crime. And being convicted of a crime at this time was very serious, because you could actually be put back into slavery. Now you may think, well, wait a minute, I thought slavery was done away with. Well, because of the way that it was worded in the 13th Amendment, it said that slavery and involuntary labor has been abolished, except if you are convicted of a crime. So if you tried to break that contract, and you would be convicted, jailed, and put back into slavery. Now, of course, they didn't call it slavery. They referred to it as convict leasing. And the way that that worked is, now that same white landowner that you broke the contract with, well, now you would be forced to go back there, but now you're going back in shackles. And all the things that applied to slavery was back on the table when it comes to beatings and things like that. You were no longer a sharecropper. So you were there as an inmate, and you could be treated just as a slave. So because of these laws, our ancestors were never able to get out of the landowner's debt. And because of this debt, they were never able to build wealth for themselves, which means that they never had wealth to pass down. So the truth is, slavery did not end in 1863 with the Emancipation Proclamation, nor in 1865 with the passing of the 13th Amendment, and not on June 19th, 1865, which became known as Juneteenth. No, it was just given a new name. Instead of being called slavery, it was called sharecropping. And oftentimes you will hear sharecropping referred to as slavery by a different name because the results were the same. It was still free labor. And this sharecropping and the Jim Crow laws that kept it in place, well, this lasted almost another 100 years. So making this Juneteenth a national holiday, a time of celebration, that, as we can see, was not really the case. This was not a jubilant time. In fact, many people said that sharecropping in some ways was even worse than slavery because in slavery we were owned, but as sharecroppers we were rented. And so how do you treat something you own and something that's rented? You see the picture. So we know that they are going to try to spend this holiday as a time in history when America tried to right a wrong. And we know that wasn't the case. In fact, if you buy into this, well, like Brother Malcolm said, you are you've been had, took, hoodwinked, bamboozled, led astray, run amok, because you wanted reparations and they gave you a holiday. It would be funny if it wasn't true, but we can see the situation. So now you're probably expecting me to say that we should boycott Juneteenth, but that's not the case. In fact, I'm going to tell you just the opposite. I want us to make this the biggest holiday in this country and use it to infuse money into the Black community. Some ways I'm talking about. I hope that we have huge parades all over the country for Juneteenth. And on this parade trail, I want to see many Black businesses set up, food trucks, people selling cakes, pies, ice cream, selling t-shirts, hats, other kind of souvenirs from Juneteenth. And when we go to these parades, I want us to plan ahead, set money aside so that we can really support those that are out there, our Black entrepreneurs, and help them to build their businesses during these parades. And make it worth a joy for everybody. If we see young people that may be there that are less fortunate, well, grab 10, 15 kids, take them over to the ice cream man. Tell the ice cream man, give them all ice cream. What if it costs you $100? Well, first, that $100 helps support a Black entrepreneur. And then on the other hand, you turn around and you see 15 kids with big smiles on their faces. See, that's money well spent. Also, cookouts. I hope that every year, the Juneteenth weekend, we have cookouts everywhere. But at these cookouts, we want to purchase everything we can from Black businesses, Black grocery stores. The meat that's hitting the grill, we want to get that from Black butchers. Plan ahead, because this may require travel on our part. There's a Black butcher that I go to that's an hour away. So we want to make plans for things like that, so that when the day comes, you know, hey, now we got the things we need and we're able to enjoy ourselves, but we know that in doing so, we supported the Black community. And in fact, if all of us do this, well, there's not going to be enough businesses out there, Black businesses, to be able to take care of all of us. And that's okay. Once we clean their shelves, we'll go out and buy the other things we need from other communities. See, we're not anti-other communities, but the focus is we want to take care of ours first, just like other communities do. And so that's what we want to do with this holiday. In fact, I want us to have a really buy Black mentality every year on that weekend. Could you imagine, just to show you how much money can be made on simple things, if Every one of us every year bought a new t-shirt, a Juneteenth t-shirt from a black entrepreneur that's selling t-shirts. Say 30 million people that weekend bought a $15 t-shirt. Do you know that is $450 million that can be made just on t-shirt purchases in a weekend? We're talking $500 million. See, I want us to flip this holiday and use it in a way that we work group economics. That's the key. See, keeping that money in our community, supporting our community. So let that be the way we celebrate this Juneteenth holiday. Well, you know I'm an insurance man, so I'm always going to end with a point talking about insurance and the importance for all of us to have life insurance to protect our family in case of a loss. And what I really want to try to emphasize is I think a lot of times we don't get it because we think it's expensive. So what I want to do is just share a quote with you that I gave to a gentleman yesterday. Now, this gentleman was a family of 6. He and his wife, 4 children. 2 of his children were young adults. But what he was interested in was, because he also had a business, so he wanted to make sure his family was taken care of if something happened to him. So he wanted a quote on $500,000 worth of insurance. And so I got him a quote of $40 a month for $500,000 worth of insurance, term insurance. Then $100,000 on his wife, I could do for $16 a month. A 21-year-old son, another $100,000, $18 a month. And an 18-year-old daughter, $100,000 of coverage and term policy for $13 a month. So all in all, this man would be able to cover his family with $800,000 worth of life insurance coverage for less than $100 a month. How am I able to do it that cheap? Well, give me a call and find out. I'll be glad to go over it with you. And once again, my number is 1-888-532-1153. So, I enjoyed our discussion tonight. It's good to look at the history of our ancestors and really try to have a good understanding of how we got to where we're at now. So I want you to go out, enjoy your new holiday, have a very happy Juneteenth weekend, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you next week. Talk to you later. Bye.